So we're going to try to get the Prime Cuts achievement today. Alright, we're switching. I don't like this gun. Let's go for the spirit. There we go. There we go, first headshot of the day. Alright, maybe we should do some pyro.
Lucky photo she took yesterday with this woman almost wearing the same dress as me walking past.
There we go, we got down that sentry. Alright, we have basically captured this point. There we go, we've captured the point. Well, we've accidentally died.
Crazy high, but to put it Put simply, my sniper gameplay would probably benefit if I turned this down a notch or two. Now yes, it ultimately does come down to personal preference, and I know that JPEG, another TF2 YouTuber, uses an in-game sensitivity of 10 and still manages to absolutely obliterate enemy gamers in competitive. For reference, that means he only has to move his mouse this much to do a 360, and I seriously have no idea how it's possible to line up a meat shot with the sensitivity that high. So whilst it wasn't absolutely necessary, I personally felt like dropping my sensitivity would help with my accuracy on sniper, especially with quick flicks and more consistent tracking. So I decided to reduce my in-game sense from 1.8 down to 1.3, aka a 30% decrease. Also, on a funny little tangent, whilst I was doing research into what mouse sensitivity I should use for this challenge, I discovered that for the past 2 years I've owned this computer, I've actually had mouse acceleration on by default, which basically means the faster you physically move your mouse, the further it will travel on screen. This just adds an extra layer of variability to your aiming, which makes solidifying your muscle memory even harder, and most people are against it. It's pretty funny because this is one of the first things basically any person who has taken a video game even semi-competitively knows about, and my dumbass forgot to turn it off when I got a new computer. And yes, it also means I've done countless challenge videos, live commentaries, weapon reviews, and even the previous 100 Days of Spy, all with this fantastic setting enabled. Does that make me feel like an idiot? Maybe a little. Anyway, back on track. I put in my new sensitivity of 1.3 into Kovacs with mouse acceleration disabled, and also tinkered with a few other settings like removing the gun model it has on by default because it takes up an annoying amount of screen, and finally got into my very first run of the routine. Luckily for me, my expectations were on the floor for how I was about to perform, especially after the fact I had just reduced my mouse sensitivity for the first time in years and eradicated thousands of hours of muscle memory instantly. I was expecting to suck shit on this first attempt, and wouldn't you know, I did suck shit on this first attempt. To illustrate how much shit sucking was done, let me explain something. There are 18 individual exercises which I had to complete to finish the full routine, and every time you make it to the end of one of those exercises, you receive a score which displays how well you do, some accuracy stuff, and a nice little ranking which compares you to everyone else who has completed that exercise before. For example, if we take a look at, I don't know, in my performance on the 8th exercise in this routine, I had to track this bouncing ball to the best of my ability. Obviously, the more times I'm able to smoothly track the ball and successfully hit the target before the exercise ends, the higher my score will be. Now, I don't get off to the best start, as my tracking feels more like little micro flicks rather than one smooth motion, and by the time I get to the end, well, it turns out my first time performance was bad enough to be in the bottom 10th percentile, aka I did worse than 90% of people who have completed this exercise. If this was an IQ distribution instead of an aim trainer score, being in the bottom 10th percentile means I legally couldn't even apply to join the military because they deem me too stupid. Now yes, this was my first time doing it, but I still didn't expect to see some of my scores hover such a comically low percentile when I've easily spent over a decade playing first-person shooters. But look, that was just one of the 18 exercises in this routine, and my performance elsewhere was nothing special, but definitely better than the bottom 10%. If we take a look at my scores, my average placement hovered the 30th percentile, which isn't anything to write home about, but I wasn't too fussed about it because I had another 99 attempts of this routine to do over the next 99 days, and I'm sure we'd improve dramatically in that time. Anyway, that's all the boring aim trainer stuff done for now. I know this isn't 100 days of Kovacs, but because I was going to be spending my first 25 minutes of every day for the next 3 months in this aim trainer, I thought it would be important to give you guys a bit of a rundown. We'll touch back in with it every so often throughout the challenge to see how I progress, but for now, I can actually introduce you to the guy this video is all about. Relative to the other classes in the game, Sniper really isn't all that complex. There's no crazy jumps to pull off, no complex trick stabs, no niche movement mechanics, and no frame-perfect combos. For a game which prides itself on its overwhelming amount of mechanical depth, Sniper really doesn't have that. You stand back, scope in, pray you don't get swarmed by a gang of conniving Frenchmen, and click heads. It sounds pretty simple, right? Well, just because it isn't the most mechanically complex class in the game, it doesn't mean it isn't challenging. In fact, because Sniper's playstyle is so simplistic, the skill ceiling of what you can master is incredibly high. So, with that in mind, let's start things off with a deeper look on how this guy actually works. If we're running off what the game tells us, Sniper is considered a support class. Now, before you start laughing, it is important to note that Spy is also categorized as a support class, so at least Valve is consistent with their bullshit. I am half joking here, but no, you are definitely not a support class when you play Sniper, at least not in the traditional sense. You don't have any healing mechanics, you can't give out resistances or revive teammates, and the closest thing you have to utility is a jar of urine. So, why did Valve put you there? Well, unlike anyone else in the game, you are the only class who functions at long distances, and this puts you in a very unique position. You'll very rarely be on the front line going toe-to-toe with power classes like Heavy and Demo, Instead, you get to play God by locking down a sight line where you'll pick off important targets to make it easier for your team to push or defend the objective. By that logic, you're more of a facilitator than anything else, and at least in theory, I can kinda see where Valve is coming from. However, when you actually start to play Sniper, you'll realize that you can deal a lot of damage. Like, more than the power classes on your team type damage, and that is thanks to your primary weapon, your bread and butter, the Sniper Rifle. Now, compared to other games, the way the Sniper Rifle works in TF2 is actually pretty unique. Rather than dealing a set amount of damage like the AWP in Counter-Strike or the Intervention in Call of Duty, TF2 Sniper Rifle has a charging mechanic, meaning the longer we're scoped in for, the more damage we can deal. This starts off at 50 damage, but scales up to 150 after 3.3 seconds of charging, which can take out 5 of the 9 classes in an instant. You can see your level of charge with this visual indicator when you're scoped
That wasn't
in,
even
and
fair.
the further along it is, the more damage you're able to do. Now, of course, what would sniping in a video game
That
be
dude
without
is bad.
And TF2 is no different in this regard. Whilst body shots will deal 50 damage, a successful headshot triples this amount to 150, and if you happen to fully charge that headshot,
what the
you can
fuck?
deal up to 450 damage, which is enough to take out a fully overhealed heavy in a single shot. It's also important to note that there's actually an 0.2 second buffer before you're able to land a headshot, meaning if you scope in and only wait 0.19 seconds before shooting, it doesn't matter if your crosshair was right on their cranium, it'll only register as 50 damage. You're also unable to
Coming for
get
you,
headshots when no
Blues.
scoping. There's no reduced damage if you hit the arms or legs. It's bolt action with 25 bullets, and for the love of God, you cannot shoot through glass windows. The amount of new players I've seen trying to line up the perfect shot on a medic with Uber through the windows on Viaduct has caused me a lot of pain in the past. There's no wall banging through surfaces, so save yourself the trouble and don't try. The only other important thing to know about the sniper rifle is that when you're scoped in, it will show a small dot on the surface you're aiming at, which the enemy team can see. And there you have it, stats you could find on the TF2 wiki or rated by yours truly. But anyway, now that we know how the rifle works, what actually is your role on the team as sniper? Well, when it came to the last 100 days challenge, I ended up labeling Spy as a disruptor. It made sense with how his kit functions and the utility it provides, but I don't know, nothing really springs to mind for sniper, because you just kinda kill everything. There's not much else to it. Now, I know this is reductive, and you can basically distill any role in a first-person shooter to, well, shoot and kill as many baddies as possible, but a sniper best represents this ethos relative to every other class in the game. You don't cap points faster, you can't quickly spam sentries, you can't reflect projectiles or extinguish teammates, you can't set defensive traps, you can't absorb damage on the front line for your team, you can't build teleporters or dispensers, you can't heal anyone, and you can't sap buildings. God truly put you on this earth for one thing only, murder. It is your job to take down the most valuable players on the enemy team whenever they are stupid enough to pick your side. So, you know what? There actually is a pretty good name for this. You're an assassin. Kill as many people as
Wunderbar.
possible without dying yourself to maximize your team's chances. And yes, I'm about to explain this very simple gameplay loop in excruciating detail for the next 6 or so hours. So, only one thing remains now. We know about the aim trainer and the Kovacs and how the rifle works and what our job is, so it is finally time to drop into our very first game. And you know what? I gotta be honest with you. I'm not gonna bullshit you into thinking I sucked real bad in the beginning. I'm not gonna synthesize this fake story where we go through the whole hero's journey shtick, the rags to riches, starting off incompetent and then getting really good.
They're gonna get the point,
Because
they're
I
gonna get the
actually wasn't
point.
terrible
Them
at
will
it.
get them.
Well,
Get them.
at least not entirely. The first thing of note happened approximately
No.
3 minutes into my first game of Sniper on Borneo when I realized that 1.3 still wasn't a low enough mouse sensitivity and decided to drop it to 1.1, which then later became 1.0, aka my initial mouse sensitivity of 1.8, which I had about 1500 hours of muscle memory committed to, had almost halved in the space of about 30 minutes. Nice. I'm sure this will do absolute wonders for my ability to click on heads in the short term. The second thing of note to happen was, wait, I'm actually not sucking as bad as I thought I would. When I played my first few games of Spy in the last challenge, my gameplay was genuinely atrocious. I was bumping into just about every enemy possible whilst invisible, and I also seemed to be incapable of getting a backstab, despite being 5 hammer units away from someone's spinal cord. But you know what? When it came to Sniper this time around, I was actually hitting some decent shots right from the very beginning. I thought the drastic change of mouse sense and being in the bottom 10th percentile on some of my Kovacs routines was the universe telling me that the next 5 days of my life were going to involve some very, very painful readjusting. But no, actually, it went a lot better than expected. Take a look here on my second game of the challenge where I'm holding this nice little sightline on Badwater until all of a sudden a soldier rocket jumps into view and oh, actually landed a pretty clean headshot on it. Or later that same day on Harvest, I'm pressuring the point and managed to pick off the sniper, then this NG, and also a spy. 3 headshot kills in like 7 seconds. That's not too shabby. I even remember this specific moment on day 2 where I was defending on up. I'd already picked up a few kills, and we were doing a pretty good job of keeping the enemy team in their spawn room until a demo launches himself through the sky in my direction, and with one clean flick, I drag my crosshair straight to their cranium and drop them out the sky. With only like 3 hours of playtime under my belt at this point, I thought it was a pretty impressive shot to hit. However, the enemy demo did not share this sentiment, as moments later this very level-headed gamer took to their keyboard and dropped a "fuck you" N-word in chat, hard R&A. Now of course, I don't want to paint the picture that I was some absolute aim god because I hit a couple good shots here and there, as it was very much not the case. For every kind of cool flick headshot on a flying demo I'd hit, there'd be about 6 misses on some revved up heavy chugging along at a snail's pace. And that actually brings me to what was by far my biggest weakness in the beginning of this challenge: inconsistency. Now look, if I'm going to be honest, this isn't the worst issue to have, as it's markedly better than being consistently bad. But what I noticed most in these early days of sniping was the absolute roller coaster in performance I had from game to game. I'd go from looking like I just picked up a mouse for the first time, missing shot after shot after shot, to Game 6 LeBron James in the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals against the Boston Celtics. Take a look here on Harvest again, where, count with me, I miss 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 headshots on these 2 snipers before a Trojan marches in and executes me with their marker gun. We can all agree that was some genuinely awful stuff, right? But 20 minutes later on Phoenix, apparently I've gotten my shit together because I delete this pyro, then this soldier, and then dunk on another one. Now, this level of inconsistency does make some sense. Sometimes you're gonna go from a lobby where you're versing a bunch of fresh installs who haven't discovered lateral movement yet, to another where each person on the enemy team has their in-game hours in the 5-digit range. Obviously, there's a little bit of gambling when it comes to casual matchmaking. Worse players tend to move in predictable patterns, which are easy to track and flick to, whereas better players are able to maneuver in a way that makes them harder to hit. But to be honest, with the way I was fluctuating in performance, I definitely knew there was more to it than just the enemies I was versing. My lack of experience on sniper and this new sensitivity basically made every flick of my mouse a roll of the dice as to whether or not I secured a headshot in these early days of the challenge. I think I was winning that gamble more often than I had any right to. Like, seriously, some of these shots were downright stupid, but my aim was definitely feeling very clunky and awkward at times. You can see that here on day 7 of the challenge, where I'm in the tunnel on Badwater and I'm greeted by a fellow sniper on the enemy team. We trade some shots, both missing, then trade some more shots, miss some more, keep missing, and before you know it, 10 seconds have passed and neither of us have managed to hit a headshot. Well, here on day 3, we're on Frontier pushing forward. And again, I'm missing shots like there's no tomorrow. There's some seriously bad stuff. Until what? Out of nowhere, I managed to drop this medic with an unreasonably clean shot. Look, my mouse movements felt erratic, my tracking was super choppy, and overall, we were just adjusting to a new class and some new settings simultaneously, meaning I had moments where I looked like I should be banned from ever holding a rifle again, and some moments like this.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
I knew with enough time that these peaks and troughs in my gameplay would begin to even out, but for now, I was having a good time with the lottery. That was my aim. Exposing yourself to similar situations is how you develop experience after all, and I knew this would lead me to more consistently good sniping in the long term. It was just gonna take a bit of time, maybe 100 days or something. I don't know. Now hopefully you're sitting back in your chair at that last section thinking, you know what, that actually makes a lot of sense. When you pick up a new skill for the first time, of course you're gonna have fluctuations in performance as you gradually learn and get better. So inconsistency is only to be expected. But for this next little road bump in my sniper journey, I don't think you'll be agreeing with me in the same way, because it kind of sounds like a joke when I verbalize it, but I promise you, it's not. So basically, the next major issue I noticed in my sniper gameplay in this first block of the challenge was killing heavies. Yeah, there is no joke. The slowest moving class in the game, who in theory should be by far the easiest to kill a sniper, especially given how fat his hitbox is, was actually giving me more trouble than I'd care to admit. Yeah, laugh at me now, get it out of your system, but if you're a sniper main, I think you'll kinda understand the issue I was having, or at least I hope you do, otherwise my credibility as a TF2 YouTuber will continue to go down the drain. Generally, heavies are one of the easier classes to kill. If they're returning to the front line and are moving in a predictable manner at their slow-ass 77% movement speed, yeah, it's not hard to put my crosshair a little bit in front of them and wait to Guitar Hero their ass when their head perfectly sits in the center of my screen. That's simple and definitely not my issue. At least most of the time. Sometimes I can even miss that, but that's not my main point here. The specific scenario I'm talking about is when those fat fuckers are revved up with their minigun and are moving at this super awkward slow pace that makes micro-adjusting your aim almost impossible as they strafe back and forth over and over. To get an idea of what I'm talking about, take a look here at this clip from day 8 where we're on Badlands. I'm positioned nicely behind my frontline combo and I spot this heavy to the right, but because he is strafing so rapidly whilst firing his Tommy Slug, it makes it so unreasonably hard to predict his movement, meaning I choke both shots. Or here on day 7, I'm farming kills from this great vantage point on Swiftwater until a revved up heavy rolls out from his spawn room.
Alright, so
I
we've
start
made a
slowly tracking his head, charging the
then
shot,
they will
but
get
just as I'm about to
shot
drop the
down.
fucker, he slowly
Well,
strafes
from
back in the opposite
up here,
direction, meaning I
because
choke the
since
shot
we have the
entirely.
high
The most
ground,
painful part about missing shots
so-
like these is that I swear to God,
Yeah,
it's always
that.
on the fresh installed Gibbous heavies who apparently have the most insane revved up movement, and this bruises my incredibly fragile ego. But credit where credit is due, they do a real good job at dodging my shots, whether they actually intend to or not. I'd
What?
love to sit here and say this weakness in my sniper gameplay gets better as the challenge progresses, and
Right,
I'm able to track these heavies with more precision, but no, not really. For some reason, this fat-ass, slow-moving Russian was going to be the bane of my existence throughout this challenge when he had absolutely no right to be. I have an embarrassing amount of clips of me screaming at myself for missing what should be very easy shots, but they'll never see the light of day because I don't want you, the viewer, to judge me and leave mean comments about my incompetence.
No, no. Strip me of everything. Get the police in here to take my computer away. Officer! Officer! His gaming license has been revoked!
Anyway, the issues I've been yapping about so far have focused on the mechanical side of Sniper, and it's pretty obvious that my aim has a very long way to go before it's anything even semi-admirable. But for this next part, I want to move over to the other side of playing Sniper, and that is game sense. It may come as a surprise to you, but no. Sniper isn't just being some aim god who can
There we
land
go.
every single headshot that comes your way. It actually takes a lot of brain power when we have to consider things like game state, where to position, which sight lines to use, and
Since the bots can't really get over there, I'm just gonna
I think it's important we begin our discussion of game sense on Sniper with the class that was single-handedly shitting on me the hardest in this first block of the challenge, and that was Spy. Because most of our existence as Sniper is spent isolated from our team, tunnel vision down a sight line, we find ourselves particularly vulnerable to the conniving Frenchman who's able to go invisible, flank behind without being noticed, and can instantly kill people who aren't facing him. I found that the presence of just a single spy on the enemy team means you have to be on high alert at all times, as there is the constant potential of him emerging from literally nothing and murdering you
So,
before
we're
you
gonna
can
go
even
back
react.
to
The
Centric,
only
so we've
counterplay
leveled
against
up,
this is constantly being on your toes and checking your surroundings and hoping
picked
one
up
pops
that.
up in that time window where you
So-
turn around momentarily before you go back to sniping. This is a significant mental burden to keep
Okay,
tabs
what
on
the
whilst you're
hell?
focused on landing headshots, and it's something I really struggled to balance in these early stages of the challenge. Take a look at this clip from day 1 where I'm slow peeking this corner on bad order and get a nice headshot on the medic, then another on this soldier, and I'm feeling good after these 2 quick frags. So I keep moving forward, get this sniper, and then, oh, a spy named Dick Stanley ruins my fucking day in the most abrupt fashion possible. Or again, later that same day, I'm defending upward last and get a nice clean headshot on the sniper, so I want to keep the momentum rolling. Playing good, so I move up until all of a sudden, yeah, another backstab puts an end to that life. There's just something so unsatisfying about dying to a backstab like this, where you've just started to get the ball rolling and you're landing your shots, so you decide to keep pressing forward and, oh, no, never mind. You have been removed from the game because you forgot to check your back at the exact moment a spy decided to push you, and it was proving to be really annoying during these early days of the challenge. The one positive takeaway I found dying to a spy in situations like
Yeah,
these
we're gonna
is the
try to
massive
grab
wake-up call.
that
It's basically
intel.
the universe reaching out through your monitor and slapping you on the face saying,
Dude, there's spies around. Please check your back more unless you want to keep feeding that guy strange kuna. Okay?
but unfortunately for me, I didn't really tend to heed the universe's warning and found myself dying on repeat to the same spies in the same spots rather frequently. Take a look at this clip from day 1 on Upward where I'm pushing around the right flank and unfortunately get backstabbed because I'm not really paying attention. Sucks, but whatever. It happens to the best of us and it's
Well,
unavoidable at times.
great.
So next time I respawn, we won't go to that right flank again because that'd be stupid. We'll instead push with our team or go up the left flank so we can have people around to help us
Yep.
deal with the spy,
They're using
and
the
therefore
teleporter.
we won't immediately die. So
Don't
fast
use
forward to our
the
next
teleporter.
life and, oh god, apparently I didn't get the memo because I decided to push the same flank again, and to absolutely no one's surprise, I died to the exact same spy in the exact same position 26 seconds later. You know that saying of how you don't have to tell a child not to touch a hot stove twice because they'll burned their hand and learned their lesson. Yeah, well, my parents clearly didn't instill that in me enough growing up. Anyway, it was only when a spy backstabbed me for a second time that a switch in my brain would usually flip and turn me into that one album by Black Sabbath, because oh boy, I do not like being repeatedly embarrassed by sneaky Frenchmen. You can see how paranoid I get in this clip from day 11, where I've been getting repeatedly swarmed by spies this whole game, so my eyes are glued to the background. I spend a full 30 seconds after activating this spy's dead ringer, making sure he doesn't reappear to frag, but it doesn't even matter because I still end up getting backstabbed by a different spy who's already dominating me at this point. Yeah, look, it was pretty grim starting things off, and it made me realize that dying to spies was going to be an inevitability for the next 100 days. There are just times where you'll be a good boy checking your surroundings to ensure you're safe for like half a minute, but the 1 second you stop to scope in is going to be the exact same time a happy-go-lucky spy will decloak behind you with the freest backstab. As I mentioned earlier, I wasn't doing the best job of keeping mental tabs on enemy spies at this point of the challenge, because even when they did backstab me twice and had me on full alert, my paranoia would only last a single life, and I'd end up going back to my default state of not really caring after that. What I had to change moving forward was that I needed to stay on high alert at all times, and if I did get backstabbed once, I needed to make sure to spy check as frequently as possible for the rest of that round. Also, on a funny note, something I realized very quickly was that starting this sniper challenge 1 week after publishing 100 Days of Spy probably wasn't the best idea, because there may or may not have been a massive influx of new players trying out the conniving Frenchman, and that isn't good when it comes to your well-being as sniper. For everyone who says I misuse my influence, well, guess what? I get caught up in my own stupidity too, as I very much shot myself in the foot here, so I think that basically makes us even for that whole lolly chop market manipulation thing that may have been against Steam's TOS. Okay? What I should have done if I had the forward thinking a year ago was do 100 Days of Sniper first, then start my spy challenge so I could farm all of the clueless newbies to make myself look like a gamer god, but that wasn't the reality we were living in. Fortunately though, this increase in spy players wasn't necessarily the end of the world, because it was a whole lot of new people picking up the class for the first time, and bad spies who decloak right next to you and don't know how to use their revolver when put in tense situations are some of the easiest kills you're gonna get as sniper. Take a look at this clip from day 5 on Upward, where I spot a teammate getting backstabbed in the head. Now, usually I'd be pretty scared. I'm on 45 HP, and I also managed to choke my shot on him, leaving me in a very vulnerable state. But when you remember that 100 Days of Spy and its consequences have been a disaster for the TF2 player base, you'll know that in the balance of probabilities, it's plausible that this guy is playing as the sneaky Frenchman for the first time. So I whip out my SMG, and just like clockwork, this guy starts fumbling between his different unlocks for 2 seconds as I pump him full of life. This kill was especially funny because one of my biggest problems I had early on playing Spy was fat fingering and accidentally swapping to my sapper or the sky scope in the middle of combat, which this poor fellow replicated perfectly, making this kill feel oddly poetic. Anyways, I think that's enough about Spy for me. It is one of the most complex matchups we have as Sniper, especially when you start introducing unlocks like the Razorback and Girardi to the mix, but we'll talk about all that in depth later in the video. Before we can officially wrap up this first block of the challenge, I want to direct our attention to the other 2 weapons we have at our disposal when playing vanilla Sniper, namely the SMG and the becouse. I figured that because we were using the stock rifle in this first section, it only made sense to use the default secondary and melee option along with it. I can't say I had particularly high hopes for either of these weapons, especially because I knew we had some super powerful unlocks to pick up later on, like the Jar of my Urine, but to my surprise, these guys proved to be really solid. The SMG especially was a really nice safety net to fall back on when I found myself in a pinch, as it gave me a fairly consistent form of damage against flankers and any enemies trying to get up close and personal. Take a look here on day 3, where we're on process, and a soldier bombs in very aggressive, which kills my teammate, and then he directs his attention towards me. In his defense, I probably think I'd be able to kill an SMG sniper in this exact scenario too, but with a combination of good tracking, movement, and some unexpected aggression, we're actually able to successfully gun down a 200 HP soldier in no time at all. Using the SMG actually reminded me a lot of the revolver on Spy, as most enemies severely underestimate how much damage this weapon can dish out in a short period of time, giving you a nice little surprise factor when you decide to take those more aggressive 1v1s. I can't even begin to tell you how many overzealous scouts would charge straight at me, taking the easiest frag of their life, and just to end up bleeding out on the ground to the 1000 paper cuts that is using the SMG. I found most of my success with the SMG when I used it in combination with some no-scopes for quick burst damage and simultaneously backpedal away from the enemy pushing me, which maximized my chance of surviving. I'd either do enough damage to secure myself a kill, or because I got them low on HP and I was already backpedaling away, they wouldn't risk overextending to kill me, so I could live to fight another day. When doing this though, you do gotta keep in mind that you are the sniper and you aren't supposed to function very well from close range. Well, at least not until we see the most disgusting combos since Carl Malone and 12-year-old girls. So
We'll go
you'll
around
probably
this
find
way.
yourself as the underdog more often than not. A scattergun, rocket launcher, or flamethrower should beat you most of the time, assuming your enemy has a baseline level of competency, but when you're in a pinch, that
this
doesn't
is
really matter.
working.
You just have to track your opponent to the best of your ability and hope you can survive in the process. I'll also mention it here, but the tracking exercises I was doing every morning at Kovacs already felt like it was helping substantially when it came to my SMG aim especially. After just 10 days of aim training, my tracking was starting to feel a lot more like one smooth motion rather than a bunch of micro flicks, and this was definitely translating to my in-game performance. My scores had already improved by an average of 36.8% in the first 10 days alone, and on that tracking exercise on the moving ball where I ranked in the bottom 10th percentile, I'd already increased my score from 176 all the way up to 349, which was the 54th percentile, aka I was now slightly better than average, and my SMG aim definitely thanked me for it. I will say that towards the end of this block of the challenge, I did feel as though I was leaning a bit too heavily on the SMG in close quarter combat, and was never really giving myself the opportunity to landing headshots in those difficult situations. Now, there's nothing wrong with this per se, but I started to realize that one of the biggest avenues for skill expression I was going to have as sniper during this challenge was my ability to land those clutch-ass headshots when an enemy scout is hunting you down or a soldier is jumping straight on top of you. I realized that too often I found myself swapping straight to my SMG and didn't even attempt to hit those harder shots with my rifle, meaning I wasn't going to get any better at it, which could create quite the hole in my skill set as a sniper. Take a look here on day 5 where I'm locking down this sideline on upward. I get a nice headshot on this soldier here until moments later, a scout drops down from seemingly nowhere and begins rushing. Fortunately, my shot is fully charged, meaning I don't even need to land a headshot here, but I get frazzled anyway and do this god-awful flick before he clanks me. I think my reaction in the moment sums things up pretty well.
No, I missed the shot on the flanking scout. No!
Well, here on day 11, we're on Cali works, and I notice the sentry on the left, but then the engineer who built it notices me and starts pushing. But for some reason, I take way too long to scope in as he is aggressing, which doesn't leave me enough time to take a close range shot on him, resulting in my swift death. Because I lack the situational experience of having enemies push aggressively, I'd either miss my close range shot on the off chance I'd actually attempt one, or I just default to using all reliable and begin spraying away as I backpedal. This is a completely feasible strategy that works well, don't get me wrong, but I realize that these are the exact scenarios where you want to be limit testing your own ability by taking those low chance shots, because that's the only way you're going to improve and get consistently good at them. Again though, we were very much still in the early days of this challenge, and this was something we would have a lot of time to improve. And with that out the way, I think it's time we wrap things up. This is only the first section of the challenge, and if I'm being honest, I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. So I hope you understand why this video is so damn long. Anyway, as you'll remember, I